A movie about summer flings, drag races, and pants that were way too tight somehow became a huge cultural force that you and your mom still know every word to. That movie was Grease, the 1978 film that made a whole generation believe senior year was all about leather jackets, perfectly matched dance moves, and completely changing who you are for the person you like. You know, the really healthy relationship stuff. Based on the hit stage musical, Grease hit theaters, and suddenly Danny Zuko and Sandy Olsen, played by John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John, were everywhere. You also had Stockard Channing giving us a Rizzo filled with sarcasm, Jeff Conaway as Kaniki, and a whole group of teenagers who were old enough to rent a car but still somehow made Ryle High feel like the coolest place on earth. Today, we're counting down 15 weird facts you didn't know about Grease, including the casting, the near disasters, and the things you never noticed even after your 473rd watch. Now, before we jump in, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to Golden Words for deep dives into the movies and shows we grew up on, and share this video with a friend who wore out their Grease VHS back in the day. Now let's get into it. Number 1. The angel they really wanted. Frankie Avalon coming down from the heavens on a staircase to sing Beauty School Dropout is one of the most memorable moments in the movie. But here's the thing, he was not the first choice. Elvis Presley was originally considered for the role of the teen angel. Think about that for a second. Elvis, the guy whose cool attitude Danny Zuko was trying so hard to copy, playing an actual angel and giving life advice to a beauty school dropout.
It's about time you knew the score.
The audience would have completely lost their minds, but Elvis turned down the role. By 1977, his health was getting worse, and for some reason, maybe because the role seemed too small, or maybe because Colonel Tom Parker was not interested, he said no. He died on August 16, 1977. And here is where it gets creepy. According to director Randall Kleiser, the news reached the set on the same day they were filming the slumber party scene where Rizzo sings.
Elvis! Elvis! Let me be! Keep that pelvis far from me!
Kleiser later said it felt very strange. It was all over the news, so everyone already knew. The crew felt totally unsettled by it. After Elvis passed on the role, the producers switched to Frankie Avalon, the squeaky clean heartthrob from all those 1960s beach movies. And honestly, it worked. Avalon fit the sweet, bubblegum fantasy of Grease perfectly. But every now and then, you cannot help but wonder what that scene would have felt like with Elvis wearing that white shirt with the oversized lapels instead. Number 2. Age ain't nothing but a number. The students of Ryle High looked less like real teenagers and more like people who had already paid taxes a few times, and nobody really seemed to care. Hollywood in the late 1970s was not interested in casting actors who were the correct age. They wanted performers who could sing, dance, hit their marks, and handle a tough filming schedule without needing a chaperone or a curfew. So Grease did not cast teens. They cast trained professionals who could still squeeze into Letterman jackets. Stockard Channing is the most famous example. Rizzo was supposed to be 17 years old. Channing was 33, almost twice that age. But honestly, that is exactly why the character works.
Well, maybe if you believe in miracles, Prince Charming will show up again someday. Somewhere unexpected.
Rizzo's cynicism, her confidence, and that clear, "I've seen some things" attitude would not have worked coming from a real teenager. You cannot fake that kind of world-weary confidence, and Channing did not need to. Then there is Jamie Donnelly, who played sweet, awkward Jan, and she had an even harder time. Donnelly was already starting to go gray at 30 years old. She had to dye her hair black for the role, but her roots grew back so fast that gray hair began showing before she could get back to the salon. Because of that, every morning the crew would color in her roots with black crayon just to make Jan look like she belonged in homeroom instead of at a PTA meeting.
Italian Swiss colony, wow, it's important. Hey, I brought some Twinkies, anybody want one?
Even the lead actors were stretching it a little. John Travolta was 23, which was practically young compared to the others. But Olivia Newton-John was 29 and was so worried about looking too old that she asked for a screen test first, just to be sure Sandy did not seem like she had already finished high school. And honestly, everyone believed it. We all wanted to be T-birds and pink ladies, but looking back now, it is kind of amazing that none of them seemed more worried about paying a mortgage instead of going to prom. Grease was not real high school. It was high school the way people remember it 10 years later. Afterlife had already started getting complicated. Number 3. The It Girls said no. Sandy Olsen felt so perfectly cast that it seemed like fate, but Grease almost gave us a very different Sandy and a very different movie. Before Olivia Newton-John, the producers were chasing almost every It Girl of the time, and each one would have pushed the film in a totally different direction. Maria Osmond was high on the list. In the late 1970s, she was America's wholesome sweetheart and seemed like an obvious choice for Sandy, but she walked away, and her reason was pretty bold. Maria hated the ending. She believed Sandy changing herself for Danny sent the wrong message to young girls. The guy should change for the girl, not the other way around. And honestly, she had a point, but that is a debate for another video. If she had said yes, Grease might have been a squeaky clean family musical with a very different final act. Then there was Carrie Fisher. Director Randall Kleiser was a college roommate of George Lucas, so while Lucas was busy working on a small sci-fi movie called Star Wars, Kleiser stopped by to look at some footage, hoping Princess Leia might work as his Sandy, but it did not give him much to judge. As Kleiser later admitted, he could not tell if she was right for a musical because all he saw was her hair. Can you imagine Sandy with Leia's attitude? Rydell High would have had a lot more edge. And Olivia Newton-John, well, she came with her own issue. Even after she signed on, she could not get an American accent right. So instead of recasting her, the filmmakers simply rewrote the character.
This here is Sandy Olsen. She just moved here from Sydney, Australia.
Sandy Dombursky became Sandy Olsen, an Australian transfer student. Problem solved. John Travolta fought hard for Olivia, calling her every guy's dream. And just like that, movie history fell into place.
Number 4. No Solo, No Olivia. Olivia Newton-John did not sign on to Grease without a few conditions. One of them was that she needed a solo. You see, the original stage musical did not have a big ballad just for Sandy. That was not how the show was built. But Olivia was a recording artist first, and her contract made it clear if she was going to carry this movie, she needed a moment to show why. The problem was that the song did not exist yet. Halfway through production, Olivia's longtime producer, John Farrar, finally delivered. He wrote a song that felt like a classic 1950s torch ballad, full of longing and heartbreak, but polished with that smooth late 1970s pop sound. In other words, exactly what Sandy needed.
Guess mine is not the first heartbroken.
But by the time the song was ready to film, principal photography had already finished. The rest of the cast had gone on to other projects, so Olivia came back alone to shoot the scene. That is why Sandy is by herself in the backyard, not because the script said so, but because of the filming schedule.
Hopelessly devoted to you.
Even her look had to be faked. Hair and makeup worked hard to recreate Sandy's earlier appearance, but if you look closely, you can see small differences from the Summer Nights sequence.
There's nowhere to hide since you pushed my love aside.
And here's the kicker. That contract requirement became the emotional heart of the film. Hopelessly Devoted to You earned the only Academy Award nomination Grease ever got for Best Original Song. It climbed the Billboard charts and helped turn Olivia Newton-John into a complete crossover superstar.
Hopelessly devoted to you.
The song has become so important that modern stage versions now include it, even though it was never in the original show. Imagine Grease without Hopelessly Devoted to You. It's like a burger without fries. That contract requirement gave Sandy her moment and gave the rest of us one of the greatest karaoke songs of all time.
Hopelessly devoted to you.
Number 5. 20 minutes to choreograph a classic. The finale of Grease looks like total chaos, but controlled chaos. The fun house, the rides, everyone dancing their hearts out while Danny and Sandy finally get together. And controlled is doing a lot of work in that sentence. Producer Alan Carr rented a real traveling carnival and set it up on the football field at John Marshall High School. Yes, a real carnival with real rides. The cast arrived and found a full Midway waiting for them. But here is where it gets tricky. You know the song, You're the One That I Want? That song, the one that's been stuck in your head since 1978 and probably played during the intro of this video. Nobody knew the song existed until they were standing on set ready to film. The cast had rehearsed We Go Together for weeks. That part was already set in stone.
We go together like ram-a-lam-a-lam-a, ding-a-ding-a-dong.
The Danny and Sandy duet, not so much. The original stage finale, All Choked Up, was cut because the producers wanted something more pop for Olivia Newton-John. Its replacement was You're the One That I Want, and it showed up so late that choreographer Pat Birch had only about 20 minutes to put together the entire Funhouse sequence. 20 minutes for one of the most unforgettable dance numbers in movie musical history. No pressure at all. The cast heard the song for the first time right there on set, so all that excitement you see on screen, that's real. They had no idea what was coming. Meanwhile, Eddie Deason, our beloved nerd Eugene, got strapped into one of those spinning carnival rides for take after take after take. When they finally got the shot, Deason stumbled off, found a nearby field, and immediately threw up. The glamour of Hollywood, folks. So yeah, when you watch that finale and everyone looks like they're running on pure adrenaline and hope, it turns out they kind of were.
Number 6. 5 days, no air, one slaughterhouse. Remember the big dance competition? All that bright energy, everyone dancing their hearts out? Nope, it was a nightmare. The National Bandstand scene was filmed at Huntington Park High School in the middle of a California summer.
In a few moments, the entire nation will be watching Rydell High, God help us. And I want you all to be on your best behavior.
The gym had no air conditioning, and then they added huge production lights, dozens of people crammed into the space, and non-breathable costumes like wool suits and thick crinolines, plus enough hairspray to damage the ozone. Temperatures on the floor reportedly hit 116 degrees. Oh, and there was a slaughterhouse nearby. Olivia Newton-John later said the smell from the meat processing plant would drift in whenever they opened the windows for relief. So the crew had a choice: keep the windows shut and slowly roast, or open them and deal with the slaughterhouse smell. Pick your poison. This wasn't a one-day shoot either. The dance sequence took 5 days to film. 5 days! So as the hours went on, pompadours started collapsing, makeup ran, and several cast members had to be pulled off the floor from heat exhaustion. Michael Tucci, who played Sonny, reportedly ended up in the hospital from dehydration. Between takes, the actors would just lie flat on the gym floor trying to recover. So the next time you watch Danny and Cha-Cha tearing it up, notice the shine on everyone's skin. That's not movie glow. That's 116-degree survival sweat. And they weren't dancing for a trophy. They were just trying to dance for fresh air. Number 7, the river nobody should have been in. That drag race looks amazing. 2 cars speeding down the concrete, Danny behind the wheel, everyone cheering like it's the coolest thing they've ever seen. What you don't see is the biohazard. The Los Angeles River was not a movie-ready location. It's a concrete drainage channel that collects runoff from half the city. By the time the grease crew showed up, whatever was in that riverbed had been baking under the California sun for weeks. It was stagnant, warm, and basically a bacterial soup, and the cars drove right through it for 3 days. Every time Greased Lightning or Hell's Chariot tore down that channel, contaminated water sprayed everywhere. The cast, the crew, anyone nearby. Nobody was thinking about what they were breathing in until they all started getting sick. Director Randall Clyer had been walking around barefoot because of the heat. He cut his foot but kept working. The next day, he had a 101-degree fever. He later admitted he was completely out of it while shooting the diner scenes, but stopping wasn't an option, so he just directed through it, fever and... Then there's Annette Charles. You know, Cha-Cha's big moment, waving that flag to start the race? She filmed it in agony. Charles had checked herself out of the hospital during testing just to make it to set. Between takes, she had to lean against cars because she couldn't stand on her own. She gritted her teeth and pushed through the scene, got the shot, and went straight back to the hospital that night, where doctors discovered an ectopic pregnancy and rushed her into emergency surgery. She didn't know what was wrong with her, she just knew she had to finish the scene. On screen, that race looks like pure greaser glory, But behind the camera, it was a director running a fever, an actress hours from the operating table, and a river of sludge nobody should have been in. That's Hollywood. Number 8. The Cola War cover-up. Ever notice the strangely blurry posters in the diner scenes? That's not a film mistake. It's corporate damage control. When the diner set was being decorated, Coca-Cola signs ended up all over the walls. Nobody noticed it was a problem until they saw the footage. The issue? Producer Alan Carr had already signed a promotional deal with Pepsi. When Carr saw Coke logos everywhere, he told director Randall Clyer to either reshoot the scenes with Pepsi products or remove the Coca-Cola signs completely. Reshooting wasn't going to happen. It was too expensive and took too much time. So they went with option C. Just blur it out.
So nobody's gonna catch grease lightning?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Somebody snaking you, Danny?
Oh, bite the weenie, Riz.
With relish.
Now this was before Adobe After Effects existed. To remove Coca-Cola from the film, the studio had to use optical mats, old-school effects applied directly to the film negative. It was clunky, it was obvious, and if you've seen those diner scenes, you know exactly what we mean. They couldn't even fix all of it. There's a red Coke cooler in the diner that was too noticeable to change convincingly, so they just left it. Kleiner later admitted they just had to hope Pepsi wouldn't complain. The 40th anniversary release finally fixed it, kinda. They digitally replaced the blurred posters with real Pepsi logos, but the editing is still noticeable if you know where to look. 40 years later, and the Cola Wars are still happening in the background of a malt shop scene. Okay, we're about halfway through this video, and I need to pause for a moment, because I have to ask, when did Grease first enter your life? Was it in a theater, on a worn-out VHS, or one of those Sunday afternoon TV reruns you always seem to stumble into? Tell us in the comments below. And while you're down there, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, you silly goose, so you don't miss our next trip back to the things we grew up on. Now let's get back to the countdown with number 9, the jackets that almost weren't. The Pink Ladies jackets are etched into pop culture. They're bright, bold, and unmistakably pink satin, making every girl in 1978 want to start her own gang. But they almost looked completely different. Costume designer Albert Wolsky originally made more simple outfits for the film, toned-down clothes that might actually look like what real 1950s teenagers wore. Director Randall Clyer wasn't having it. He wanted more color, more energy, and a musical that popped off the screen like a jukebox on fire. So Wolsky went back to the drawing board. According to legend, he threw the school dress code out the window and went full kaleidoscope. Bold colors, flattering shapes, and yes, those unmistakable pink satin jackets. The goal wasn't realism, it was impact. Grease was never meant to look like a real 1950s high school. It was supposed to look like the version of the 50s you'd dream up after too many root beer floats, if you catch my drift. And it worked. Those jackets became an instant symbol of rebellion, sisterhood, and looking cooler than everyone else in the room. 45 years later, you still can't throw a costume party without someone showing up in pink satin with their name stitched on the front. Going big was the only choice the Pink Ladies ever needed to make. Number 10, Danny Zuko was supposed to die. Grease doesn't start like a normal movie. There's no live-action cold open, no establishing shots, just bright, bubbly animation and a disco song. It's a strange choice for a 1950s musical, almost like something left over from a completely different film. And that's because it kind of was.
Before John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John ever set foot on a sound stage, the first person to grab the film rights was Ralph Bakshi. If that name doesn't sound familiar, his resume will. He made Fritz the Cat, the first animated feature to get an X rating in the United States. Bakshi didn't make cartoons for kids. He made cartoons for people who probably shouldn't have been watching cartoons. Bakshi's vision for Grease had the same kind of energy.
It was dark, adult-oriented, and animated. And according to co-creator Jim Jacobs, when they asked how the story would end, Bakshi's team gave an answer nobody expected. Danny Zuko takes his own life. Jacobs later recalled that he and co-writer Warren Casey were kicking each other under the table during that meeting. Bakshi's option on the rights eventually expired in 1976. Producer Alan Carr stepped in, paid $200,000 out of his own pocket, and teamed up with Robert Stigwood to turn Grease into the lighter, PG-rated version we all got in 1978. But Bakshi didn't let the idea go. In 1982, he released Hey Good Lookin', an animated film set in the 1950s with leather jackets, greaser gangs, and a main character who looks suspiciously like Danny Zuko.
Hey, Norman Rockwell, draw me a picture. Here, come on, draw me a picture.
The animated opening we actually got was made by John David Wilson and his studio, Fine Arts Films. It had nothing to do with Bakshi at all. But every time those cartoon T-birds appear on screen, it's hard not to wonder what Bakshi's version would have looked like. Number 11, His Car, His Dream, Someone Else's Song. Greased Lightning feels completely tied to Danny Zuko. The swagger, the dancing, the perfectly timed high dramatic delivery, it's impossible to imagine anyone else leading that number. The funny thing is, it was never supposed to be his song. In the original Broadway musical and in the early plans for the film, Greased Lightning belonged to Kenickie. It was his car, his dream, his big moment. The song was pure working-class bravado designed to give Jeff Conaway his spotlight. Here's the twist. Conaway had actually played Danny Zuko on Broadway. He started as an understudy and eventually took over the lead role. When the film was made, he had to step aside so John Travolta could play Danny and settle for the sidekick part instead. But at least he'd still have the showstopper, right? Well, wrong. By the time filming began, Travolta was Hollywood's next big star. He had just finished Saturday Night Fever, and everyone knew that movie was going to be huge. Travolta saw Greased Lightning for what it was, the high-energy number everyone would remember, and he wanted it. Director Randall Kleiser felt it was only right to ask Conaway if that was okay. Conaway refused at first, but eventually he gave in. So the guy who played Danny on Broadway got demoted to Kenickie, then watched his big song get given to someone else, and the hits kept coming, literally. During the Greased Lightning shoot, Conaway was accidentally dropped by other cast members and injured his back. Doctors prescribed painkillers. That injury sparked an addiction that followed him for the rest of his life. On-screen, Travolta drove that song straight into movie legend, but off-screen, Conaway paid for it in ways nobody saw coming. Number 12. The outfit that required a seamstress on standby. Sandy strutting out in those high-waisted black pants is one of the most legendary transformations in movie history. In under 30 seconds, the sweet Australian transfer student becomes the coolest person in the room. But what you don't see is that Olivia Newton-John was basically vacuum-sealed into that outfit, and one bathroom break could have shut down the entire production. Those pants weren't made for the film, they were vintage. Costume designer Albert Wolsky wanted to stay true to the 1950s, so he tracked down a pair of body-hugging, high-waisted sharkskin pants actually from the era. By 1978, those pants were already about 20 years old. There was only one pair, so no backups, no doubles. As Olivia later said, one rip and disaster. Here's where it gets interesting. When Olivia first tried on the pants, the zipper was already broken, completely dead. Wolsky didn't want to risk ruining the vintage fabric by replacing it, so the costume department came up with a creative solution. They would sew her into them every single morning. That meant once she was stitched in, that was it. No sitting comfortably, no bending over, and bathroom breaks became a full production. The crew had to carefully unpick the stitching, let her out, and then sew her back in again. Olivia later joked that it limited her drinking and eating because they had to unzip her and sew her up again. Those were long days. And she danced anyway. Every kick, spin, and confident strut in You're the One That I Want was done knowing those decades-old seams could give out at any second. Sandy looks freer and more powerful than ever, while the actress playing her is literally trapped in vintage fabric held together by thread and determination. When filming ended, Olivia got to keep the costume. In 2019, she auctioned both the jacket and pants to raise money for her cancer wellness center in Australia. Together, the outfit sold for $45,700, more than double what auction house Julian's had estimated.
The leather jacket alone went for $243,200, while the pants, still with that broken zipper, sold for $1,625,500 to Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx. Blakely called Olivia the OG of black leggings and now has those pants framed and displayed at Spanx headquarters.
Number 13. The crown that took 40 years to steal. Critics weren't exactly impressed. Reviews ranged from terrific fun to pleasant but plastic, with one saying it had about as much bite or substance as white bread. Teenagers everywhere couldn't have cared less. They showed up in droves and kept showing up. Grease wasn't just a movie, it was a cultural tidal wave. When it hit theaters in the summer of 1978, nobody at Paramount expected what happened next. They thought it was a safe, mid-budget teen flick made for just $6 million. Instead, it became a financial giant that redefined what a musical could do for a modern audience. The movie didn't just succeed, it dominated. Grease became the highest-grossing film of 1978, beating out Superman and Jaws 2. And it didn't stop there. It shattered the Sound of Music's 13-year reign as the highest-grossing musical ever made. In the United States, Grease claimed the throne as the highest-grossing live-action musical, a title it would hold for nearly 40 years.
Sandy, can't you see?
Think about that. Through the 1980s, 1990s, and 2000s, decades of big-budget musicals swinging for the fences, none of them could knock Danny and Sandy off their domestic throne. It wasn't until 2017, when Disney released Beauty and the Beast, that Grease finally lost the crown, and then Wicked dethroned it in 2024. Worldwide, La La Land managed to surpass Grease in 2012, but even that took more than 3 decades. Made for $6 million, Grease went on to earn $396 million worldwide, 66 times its budget.
Number 14. The ending nobody can explain. Most movie couples get a kiss at the end, maybe a slow dance. But Danny and Sandy, they get into a convertible and fly away. No explanation, no warning, just straight up into the clouds. Like that's a perfectly normal thing to do in a car. Director Randall Kleiser has been asked about this moment for years, and his answer is basically a shrug. The flying car wasn't in the stage play, not even close. The original musical ends at the Burger Palace, where Sandy shows up in her new look and everyone sings "We Go Together" with their feet firmly on the ground.
We go together like
No carnival, no liftoff, just a regular happy ending. The movie had other plans. It opens with a wild animated title sequence and closes with a car ignoring every law of physics imaginable. Grease wasn't interested in making sense. It was interested in making you feel something. Now, the internet being the internet, someone eventually came up with the Sandy is dead theory. The idea is that the whole movie is Sandy's dying hallucination after nearly drowning at the beach. In Summer Nights, Danny brags that he saved her life, and fans grabbed that line and ran with it. The flying car is Sandy ascending to heaven. The perfect ending is a fantasy as she slips away. Grease co-creator Jim Jacobs shut that down hard. He told TMZ the person who came up with that theory must have been on acid. Sandy was very much alive. Olivia Newton-John thought it was hilarious and joked that it would make Grease the first zombie musical. So no, the car flying isn't Sandy going to heaven, it's just gloriously weird. Any other movie would have been laughed out of theaters, but Grease was already a world where auto shops break into choreographed fantasy numbers and Frankie Avalon floats down from the clouds to give beauty school advice. At that point, a flying car is just another Tuesday.
Number 15. The Fonz said no.
Danny Zuko strutted into our hearts with that perfect mix of charm, swagger, and vulnerability. But that performance almost never happened because the role was first offered to the Fonz. In 1977, Henry Winkler was television royalty. His Arthur the Fonz Fonzarelli on Happy Days was the face of 1950s nostalgia.
One time only. Line right up here, kiss the Fonz for $1. Now that's a bargain at any price.
When the producers of Grease came calling, they were offering him the crown jewel of teen cool. Winkler said no, flat out. He was terrified of being typecast. He was already the leather-jacketed, motorcycle-riding cool guy every week on ABC. Taking Danny would have cemented him as the greaser with a heart of gold forever, leaving no room for anything else. That refusal opened the door for a young actor just starting to break out on Welcome Back, Kotter, John Travolta. He'd already played Danny in the touring stage production of Grease, but now he had his shot at immortality. Travolta brought something Winkler couldn't. He could sing and he could move. His mother owned a dance studio, and by the time he wrapped Saturday Night Fever, released just months before Grease, he trained with top choreographers until his footwork was bulletproof. Danny Zuko required someone who could carry a tune, sell a love story, and make every musical number feel effortless. Travolta delivered all of it. Winkler later admitted he'd made a mistake. He summed it up perfectly. He went home and had an orange juice, while Travolta went home and bought a plane. He also acknowledged Travolta was the better fit, especially since Winkler couldn't really sing. But the what-if still haunts Hollywood trivia boards to this day. It's the decision that launched 1,000 dance floors. If Winkler had said yes, we might have gotten a glorified Happy Days movie with a different title. Instead, we got John Travolta and a generation-defining performance that still holds up. And there you have it, 15 weird facts you didn't know about Grease. Which one blew your mind the most? And which scene from the movie still plays in your head after all these years? Hit like if this stirred up some memories. Subscribe for more deep dives into the TV shows and movies that raised us. And share this video with a friend whose favorite karaoke song is Summer Nights. Until next time,